What was once the wealthiest part of Glasgow, but then became the worst street in Scotland? And how did a railway crash through a building?
We are now approaching Glasgow Central. Please mind the gap when alighting from this train.
Find out now in this episode of Astonishing Glasgow. At 850 years old in 2025, it is no surprise that parts of Glasgow have gone through some pretty major changes since its first beginnings. The earliest city was focused on the High Street, with the cathedral at the top of the hill, and at the bottom of the hill, the Market Cross and the civic chambers inside the toll booth. As wealth grew in the city, the area to the east of the High Street and south of the Gallowgate was sold to developers in 1734 and laid out for building a brand new estate for wealthy merchants. A major feature on this land was the Mollendiner burn. At the time, High Street residents had no sewage systems, and everything ended up in the Mollendiner. Tanners, fleshers, dye works and all other businesses were using the burn to get rid of their waste. So by the time it reached here at the bottom of the hill, it was a thick, dark, bubbling and putrid stream. Not a pleasant place for a paddle. Development for the housing soon stalled, but construction of St Andrews Kirk had begun in 1740. By 1778, the area had a completed church, but that wouldn't be known as St Andrews on the Square until 1787, when the housing and commercial area was completed around it, and it was enclosed in a square. I don't think I need to explain why it's now called St Andrews in the Square. The area was home to wealthy merchants such as David Dale, as talked about in episode 35 of Astonishing Glasgow. The rich could walk to the shops on Gallowgate via St Andrews Lane. As well as all the new buildings, you may notice two things about this later map. The burn still flows openly through the area, and in 1807 there is no London Road, but that was about to arrive. This may have been the heart of the city's commercial district, but with Glasgow growing east, a new road was needed, and in 1820 an Act of Parliament allowed for the building of London Street. Not London Road yet. London Street was to be bulldozed straight through the area and straight through the houses. The new road would need to get across the Mollendiner burn, which, as we know, was filthy. So to bring the new road to the same level as the existing Gallowgate, an Act of Parliament allowed for London Street to be raised up and to cross the burn and the existing St Andrews Lane on two arched bridges. This was the beginning of the process that would eventually conceal the Mollendiner burn below the streets of Glasgow, never to be seen again. St Andrews Lane no longer exists either, but you can find a rather large trace of it if you know where to look. Just off the Gallowgate, and we're back in the Barrowland Park. The history of the park is told all the way back in episode 3 of Astonishing Glasgow. For a park that was only supposed to last a couple of years, it is now 10 years old, though sadly the band path breaks up just a little bit more every winter, so it might not last many more years. In the corner of the park, however, is this iron arch, 200 years old and still holding up London Road. This is where St Andrews Lane emerged from the well-to-do St Andrews Square in 1826. These are the remains of the oldest iron road bridge in Glasgow. Now this is a detail of George McCulloch's lithograph showing the area around 1852, and you can see that it's now a very crowded neighbourhood. The entrance to the tunnel on St Andrews Lane is just visible to the right of St James's Free Church, which stood on this corner of London Street and James Morrison Street. The population was growing, but the area was in decline. By the 1860s, a lot of the wealthy residents had moved west. The densely built tenements were heavily overcrowded. There was disease, poverty and crime. St Andrews Lane was described as the most notorious street in Glasgow, and the worst place in Scotland. Quite a claim. In 1866, the conditions had got so bad that the City Improvement Trust was formed by an Act of Parliament. Its job was to improve the city of Glasgow, and they chose this area around the Gallowgate as the best place to start. James Morrison Street was built at a gradient to meet London Road, completely blocking off the southern end of the St Andrews Street tunnel. This side remained opened as it provided access to warehousing and storage underneath the road, but the passageway is now completely closed off. For many years the arch was mostly forgotten about, situated at the dead end of a lane beside the legendary Shipka Pass. After the fire that destroyed Shipka Pass and the surrounding buildings in 2011, the Iron Arch was revealed again, and then it was tidied up when the area was turned into the Barrowland Park just in time for the 2014 Commonwealth Games. Now completely blocked up, the only opening underneath the arch is a ventilation tunnel for the railway that is now the Argyll Line. And if you wait long enough, you will hear the trains passing below. This would not be the only railway that would carve its way through the Gallowgate, however, and incredibly, one of the Georgian buildings of the Gallowgate has survived in plain sight. The Argyll Line was built underground in 1895 by the Caledonian Railway Company, whose terminus was the Glasgow Central Station. The City of Glasgow Union Line was proposed in 1864 to connect the passenger terminus at St Enoch Square to the goods terminus at the High Street. This railway was elevated above street level as it left this bridge over the Clyde, then followed left to St Enoch Station and to the right towards the High Street goods station. But before it gets there, it needed to cross the Gallowgate. This is the railway line that crosses the two bridges behind the Market building. Now the railway didn't open until 1870, right at the same time that the City Improvement Trust was in the process of demolishing buildings in the area. So it seems incredible that a Georgian tenement which stood in the path of the railway would manage to survive this period. But what exactly do I mean by Georgian? The Georgian era is generally considered to be between 1714 to 1837, and architecturally it is defined by long terraced blocks with symmetrical features on the facade. Bath Street, Blythewood Square and not surprisingly George Square all date from the Georgian period, and when first laid out, George Square was surrounded by Georgian townhouses like this one. The only Georgian building left on the square is now the Millennium Hotel. It had an attic floor added in 1903 when it was bought by the North British Railway, but you can see that symmetrical facade which marks it out as a Georgian terrace. So back to the cross, and you might be asking where the symmetrical Georgian terrace is, as there is no symmetrical facade on the cross. You do need to look closely, as incredibly, the building survived having a railway punched right through it, and here it is. Now, I'm not brilliant at Photoshop, but if I add the missing bite that the railway took out, you can see that right here on the cross is a grand Georgian building, or at least 2/3 of one. Now I'm going to need to add a small caveat. I was pointed in the direction of this building by friend of the channel Roger Edwards, who has researched this block a lot deeper than I have, but neither of us can find any pictures of the building before the railway bridge. By sweeping the map overlay on the National Library of Scotland website, you can see the outline of the building before and after 1863. All the clues lead to the same conclusion, that this was a Georgian tenement or a Georgian townhouse. But as yet I cannot find an exact construction date for the building, but it must be before the railway was built. If you have any more information on the building, please do get in touch. So now you know how this part of Glasgow went from riches to rags and then almost completely disappeared. How the oldest bridge in the city got blocked, and how Glasgow had a railway go straight through a building. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps my YouTube channel grow. If you want to grab yourself some merch, have a look on my Spreadshirt page, the link is in the video description. You can help me make more episodes of Astonishing Glasgow by hitting that super thanks button and donating what you can. Hard drives, cameras, train tickets and Empire biscuits all add up, so every penny is greatly appreciated. And these are the stoters who donated after the last episode. If you want to get in touch, you can do so through the comments section or follow my adventures over on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time in Astonishing Glasgow. Right, I'm diving into the Val d'Oro for a double nugget. I'll see you later.